At my husband's funeral, as I stood over his coffin with tears running down my face, I heard a sound that cut through the silence like a blade. Laughter. I turned my head and saw my daughter-in-law smirking, leaning close to her friend, whispering with satisfaction, "Finally it's over." She didn't know I heard her. She didn't know what I had planned. But by the time I was done, she would regret that smirk for the rest of her life. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and I am 80 years old. For 55 years, I was married to a man named Walter. He wasn't perfect, no man is, but he was steady. He was my rock, my safe harbor when the world around me grew rough. Together we raised 2 children, built a modest life in a small town, and endured every trial side by side. When cancer took him, it felt like someone had ripped the floorboards from under me. The days leading up to his death were quiet but cruel: whispered prayers in hospital hallways, the smell of antiseptic, the long beeping of machines. I had known grief before, my parents, siblings, old friends gone too soon, but losing Walter was different. It was like losing half my soul. The morning of his funeral was grey and heavy. Clouds sagged low, and rain drizzled over the churchyard as though the heavens themselves mourned him. I dressed carefully, black dress, black hat with a veil, pearls Walter had given me on our 30th anniversary. My hands trembled as I buttoned my coat, but I forced myself steady. He deserved dignity. Family gathered, neighbors came, and the pews filled with familiar faces. People whispered condolences, some genuine, some perfunctory. My son Michael stood tall at my side, though his eyes were swollen from crying. My daughter Helen wept openly, clutching tissues as if they were her lifeline. And then there was Ava, my daughter-in-law. Ava had been part of our family for 15 years, married to Michael. From the very beginning, something about her unsettled me. She was beautiful, yes, and smart. But her beauty was sharp, like glass. Her smile never quite reached her eyes. She carried herself like she was always calculating something, a person who treated family gatherings like boardroom negotiations. Still, for Michael's sake, I tolerated her. I smiled, I welcomed her, I tried to be civil. Walter, ever the optimist, insisted she would soften with time. But at his funeral, there was no softness. The service began. Hymns were sung, prayers recited. I clutched the folded handkerchief in my lap, eyes fixed on the polished coffin at the front of the church. Walter's name echoed through the sanctuary, his memory spoken of with respect and love. And then, during a moment of silence, I heard it. A sharp, short laugh. I turned my head slightly and caught her, Ava. Sitting in the second row, dressed in a sleek black dress that seemed more suited for a cocktail party than a funeral. She was smirking. Not weeping, not solemn, smirking. Her lips curled in satisfaction as she leaned toward the woman beside her and whispered, "Finally it's over." My breath caught in my throat. My chest tightened. For a moment, I thought I had misheard, that grief had clouded my senses. But then the woman beside her glanced at her in surprise, eyes widening, before quickly looking away. No, I hadn't imagined it. She had said it. She had meant it. I felt my blood turn to fire. My fingers dug into the fabric of my dress as I forced myself to remain still, to remain dignified. This was Walter's day, not hers. I would not dishonor him with an outburst in the middle of his funeral. But inside, a seed was planted. A dark, vengeful seed. When the service ended, people lined up to offer condolences. I smiled weakly, accepted hugs, murmured thanks. But every time my eyes met Ava's, she looked away quickly, her expression carefully neutral, as though nothing had happened. As though she hadn't just desecrated my husband's memory with her arrogance. Later, at the graveside, the rain thickened, dripping off umbrellas. I stood close to the coffin as it was lowered, whispering a prayer only Walter would hear. Tears blurred my vision, but even through them, I saw her. Standing a few feet away, her arms folded, her face unreadable. No tears. No grief. Only impatience, as though waiting for the ceremony to end so she could return to her life. Finally, it's over. The words replayed in my head like a cruel refrain. But over what? Over Walter's life? Over our marriage? Over what she thought she could finally take now that he was gone. That night, alone in the quiet house, I couldn't sleep. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, but it was Ava's smirk that haunted me. What had she meant? What had she been waiting for? I rose from bed and wandered into Walter's study. His smell still lingered faintly: tobacco, old books, leather. I traced my fingers across the desk where he had paid bills, kept records, scribbled notes. And then something caught my eye. A folder, tucked in the corner. Legal papers. Deeds. Insurance documents. I opened it slowly, my wrinkled hands trembling as I flipped through. There, written in Walter's careful handwriting, was something I hadn't known. Something that made my breath hitch in my chest. Ava's words suddenly made more sense. And in that moment I realized, she thought she had already won. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. The folder trembled in my hands. Walter's handwriting was steady and neat, the way it had always been. Even now, seeing his signature on those pages made my chest ache. But beneath the grief, something colder coiled. I sat down at his desk, the lamp casting a yellow glow over the papers. Insurance policies, property deeds, bank records. All organized, labeled. Walter had been meticulous that way. And then I saw it, his will. My hands shook as I pulled it free. I had never read it before. Walter and I had discussed it only in passing, him brushing it off with a gentle, "Don't worry, Ellie, everything will be taken care of." Now I understood what Ava's smirk had meant. The will was clear: everything, the house, the savings, the insurance payout, went first to me. But in the event of my passing, it was to be divided between Michael and Helen. Straightforward. Fair. Except for one addition, written in Walter's careful hand but added only last year. A trust fund, established in Michael's name, to be managed jointly by him and his wife, Ava Hayes. My stomach twisted. There it was. Ava's ticket. Walter, ever trusting, had thought he was doing right by giving Michael a little help with finances, and Ava had slid herself into the arrangement neatly. With Walter gone, she must have thought she could corner Michael, control the trust, and by extension me. Finally, it's over. Yes, to her, Walter's death wasn't just the end of a man's life. It was the beginning of an opportunity. I pressed my hand against the desk, steadying myself. She had no idea I had read this. She thought I was blind with grief. She thought I was weak. But she was wrong. The next morning, I called Helen. My daughter's voice cracked through the line, raw from crying. "Mom," she said softly. "I didn't sleep. I miss him so much." "I know, baby," I whispered. "I do too." For a moment, we cried together, silent tears shared across the phone. But then I steadied myself. "Helen, did you notice Ava at the funeral?" There was a pause. Then a sharp exhale. "Yes. I thought I imagined it, but," she smirked, "didn't she?" "I saw it too." My chest tightened. "You did." "I did," Helen said firmly. "I thought maybe I was losing my mind." But she looked satisfied. Hearing that validation was like a spark. It wasn't just me. Ava's mask had slipped, and at least one other person had seen it. That evening, I invited Helen over. Together we went through Walter's papers, her eyes widening at the mention of the trust. "She knew," Helen said, shaking her head. "She must have known about this. That's why she looked like she'd won something." I folded the papers carefully. "Yes. And if she thinks I'll hand her the reins, she's mistaken." For the next few days, I played the part of the grieving widow. People brought casseroles, sent flowers, offered prayers. I smiled politely, thanked them, and kept my suspicions quiet. All the while, Ava remained perfectly composed. Too composed. At the memorial luncheon, she flitted from table to table like a hostess at a gala. "Walter would have wanted us to celebrate his life," she said, her smile smooth. I watched her closely, her hands brushing against Michael's arm, her voice always just loud enough to be heard. She was already slipping into the role of decision-maker, as if the family was hers to lead. Michael, blinded by grief, leaned on her heavily. He nodded when she spoke, followed when she moved. He didn't see it, the way she maneuvered, the way she claimed space. But I did. One evening, a week after the funeral, there was a knock on my door. It was Ava. She stood there in her sleek black coat, her makeup flawless, her smile tight. "Eleanor," she said smoothly, "I thought we should talk." I let her in, though every fiber of my being bristled. We sat in the living room, the clock ticking loudly between us. "You must be overwhelmed," she began. "Walter handled so much. And now, well, now it falls on you." I said nothing, only watched. She leaned forward, her smile sharpening. "But you don't have to carry it all alone. Michael and I can help. Especially with the finances. You know Walter trusted us with that." There it was. The first attempt. I tilted my head. "Did he?" "Yes," she said quickly, too quickly. "The trust, it was his idea. He wanted me to guide things. To make sure Michael didn't have too much on his shoulders. You know how he can be." My stomach churned, but I kept my face calm. "I see." She reached out, her manicured hand brushing the arm of my chair. "So when you're ready, just sign the papers. Transfer things into the trust. It will be easier for everyone." Her eyes gleamed as she said it, her smirk barely hidden. I smiled faintly, though it burned. "Of course, Ava. When I'm ready." Her smile faltered slightly, just for a moment, before she composed herself. She left soon after, kissing my cheek as though she cared. The moment the door closed, I exhaled sharply. My hands shook, but not from fear. From fury. She thought she had cornered me. She thought grief made me soft. She thought she could step into Walter's shoes and seize control. But she didn't know me. I went back to Walter's study, pulled out the folder again, and laid it flat on the desk. I read every line, every clause, every word. My eyes burned, but I forced myself to keep going until the truth was clear. Walter had left me more than property, more than accounts. He had left me control. Every signature required my approval. Every penny in that trust had to pass through me first. Ava thought she had won. But the power was still mine. And I intended to use it. As I closed the folder, I whispered to the empty room, to Walter, to myself. "She smirked at your funeral, my love. She thinks she's clever. But I'll make her pay for every smile, every whisper." And in that quiet house, a plan began to take shape. After Ava's visit, I knew one thing for certain: she wasn't going to wait long. She would press, and press hard. And if I resisted, she'd try to corner me, maybe even turn Michael against me. But I had lived too long, seen too much, to be easily cornered. I spent the next few days in Walter's study, reading every word of his will until I knew it by heart. The trust sounded powerful, but it was limited. It gave Ava only what I allowed. Walter had designed it to help, not to hand her control. He had trusted her too much, but he had trusted me more. And that was her mistake, thinking she could outplay me on paper I already held. I called Mr. Franklin, the attorney who had helped Walter draft the documents. He was a small, wiry man in his 70s, sharp as a tack despite his age. "Mrs. Hayes," he said kindly over the phone, "Walter made sure you were in charge. Nothing moves without your approval." That confirmation was all I needed. "Good," I said softly. "Because Ava is already circling. And I intend to let her circle until she tangles herself up." He chuckled. "I always liked your spirit. Careful, patient. That's how you win." Patience. That would be my weapon. The following Sunday, the family gathered for lunch. Helen came early, helping me set the table, her eyes still red from crying but her hands steady. Michael arrived next, quiet, withdrawn, with Ava at his side. She walked in like she owned the place. Her black heels clicked on my hardwood floors, her eyes darting around the dining room as though measuring what she'd soon claim. "Eleanor," she said smoothly, kissing my cheek. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I said, giving her a smile that never touched my eyes. As we ate, Ava talked more than anyone else. She spoke of managing responsibilities, of helping the family transition. She slipped phrases in like, "when we handle the accounts, and we'll take care of the property decisions." I noticed Michael didn't correct her. He simply kept his eyes on his plate, nodding faintly, his grief making him blind, or maybe making him dependent. Helen, however, glared. Finally, Ava turned to me. "Eleanor, have you thought about what we discussed? Signing the papers, letting the trust handle things? It would take a load off your shoulders." The room went quiet. Forks paused. I sipped my tea calmly. "I have thought about it." Her eyes lit up. "And I smiled faintly. I think Walter was very wise. He put me in charge. He trusted me to manage it. And I intend to honor that. The silence grew heavy. Ava's smile faltered, then froze. Helen smirked into her napkin, hiding her laughter. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should. But Ava cut him off. Eleanor, with all due respect, this is too much for you. The stress, the decisions, you could make a mistake. I set down my cup with a soft clink. Then I'll live with my mistakes. At least they'll be mine. Her jaw tightened. For the first time, the mask cracked. I saw it, the frustration, the impatience, the fury at being denied. She quickly forced a smile, but I had seen it. The meal ended tensely, Ava bustling out with clipped words about appointments, while Michael trailed after her like a shadow. After they left, Helen grabbed my hand. Mom, she's furious. I've never seen her look like that. I squeezed her fingers. Good. Let her stew. The angrier she gets, the more reckless she'll become. And reckless was exactly what I needed. That week, I began my quiet trap. First, I moved Walter's important documents into a fireproof safe I kept in the closet. Every account number, every deed, every policy. Copies went into Helen's hands, just in case. Second, I visited the bank and introduced myself to the new manager. If anyone comes asking about Walter Hayes's accounts, I said firmly, you contact me directly. No exceptions. Yes, ma'am, the manager replied. And third, I spoke with Mr. Franklin again, making sure he understood. Ava would try to push. When she comes to you, I said, and she will, let her think she's close. Let her think she's winning. And then let her sign herself into a corner. He smiled. I can do that. By the end of the week, everything was in motion. Then one evening, I got a call from a friend. Eleanor, she said carefully, I don't know if you want to hear this, but I overheard Ava at the salon today. She was laughing about how soon the house will be hers. She said she already has plans to modernize the place. My grip on the phone tightened. Plans. For my house. The one Walter and I had built together brick by brick, memory by memory. I forced my voice calm. Thank you for telling me. But inside, rage burned. 2 days later, Ava appeared at my door again. This time she didn't bother with pleasantries. She stood tall, her smile thin, her voice sharp. Eleanor, I know you're struggling. It's not good for you to hold on to all this. You're old, and you're grieving. You shouldn't have to handle the finances. Walter wanted me to help, and I intend to. I let her speak, let her arrogance spill like poison into the room. When she was done, I leaned back in my chair, pearl earrings glinting in the lamplight. You're right about one thing, I said softly. I am old. But I'm not weak. And I see more than you think. Her smirk faltered. For just a moment, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. And I knew then, the time was coming. The papers I'd found in Walter's study held more than just the trust. They held something Ava didn't know, something that would shatter her illusions completely. I wasn't ready to reveal it yet. Not until the stage was set, not until everyone could see her for what she truly was. But soon. Very soon. Ava was a proud woman. Too proud. And pride, I had learned long ago, is the quickest way to a downfall. After our last conversation, she couldn't hide her frustration anymore. She still came around, still played the role of the dutiful daughter-in-law, but her mask was cracking. Every time she forced a smile, her eyes betrayed her, sharp, calculating, impatient. Helen noticed it too. She's unraveling, my daughter whispered one afternoon as we drank tea in the kitchen. She thought Dad's death meant she could swoop in and take control. Now she's realizing you're not going to let her. I nodded slowly, staring into my cup. And when people like Ava get desperate, they get sloppy. Sure enough, a week later, she proved me right. I was at the grocery store, picking up flour for Helen's favorite pie, when 2 women from church stopped me in the aisle. Eleanor, one of them said, her voice hesitant, we heard something strange. Is it true you're giving the house to Michael and Ava? That you're too tired to handle things yourself? My chest tightened. Ava had been spreading rumors. Laying groundwork, trying to make her lies look like truth. I smiled calmly, though inside I burned. No, it isn't true. I am managing just fine. Walter left me in charge, and that is how it will remain. Their relieved nods told me everything. Ava had been planting seeds, but I had just yanked them out by the roots. That night, I called Mr. Franklin again. It's time, I told him. Set the meeting. He hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, I said firmly. Let her think she's about to win. Then let the truth bury her. The following Friday, Ava arrived at my house with Michael in tow. She was dressed sharply in a fitted suit, heels clicking like a hammer against my floor. Michael looked tired, worn down, his eyes hollow. Eleanor, she said, her voice smooth as silk, Mr. Franklin has set up a meeting for us to finalize the trust arrangements. It's time to make this official. Of course, I said, smiling faintly. I'll be there. Her eyes gleamed with victory. She thought I had finally given in. That weekend, I prepared. I gathered Walter's documents, the will, and most importantly, the paper I had found tucked at the back of the folder. The one Ava didn't know existed. The one that would expose her arrogance to everyone. It was a codicil, an addendum to Walter's will. Written in his hand, signed and notarized. In it, he had made his wishes clear. If either of our children's spouses ever tried to manipulate or control the trust, their authority would be revoked. Permanently. It was Walter's last safeguard, his quiet acknowledgement that not everyone who married into the family could be trusted. When I first found it, grief and gratitude had warred inside me. Walter had seen what I had seen. He had tried to protect me, even after he was gone. Now, that safeguard would become my sword. The day of the meeting arrived. We sat in Mr. Franklin's office, Michael pale and nervous, Ava radiant with smug confidence, and me calm and composed. The air smelled of old paper and polished wood. Now then, Mr. Franklin began, laying the folder on the table, we're here to discuss the trust fund and management responsibilities. Ava leaned forward eagerly. Yes. Eleanor has agreed that it's best if Michael and I take the reins. It's too much for her at her age. Michael shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Mr. Franklin glanced at me. Is that so? I folded my hands neatly in my lap. That is what Ava believes. But what I believe is that Walter's words matter more than either of ours. Ava blinked, her smile faltering. What do you mean? I reached into my bag and placed the codicil on the desk. I mean this. Her eyes darted to the paper, confusion flickering, then dawning horror as she read. Her lips parted, but no words came. Michael leaned closer, his eyes widening as he scanned the lines. If a spouse attempts to control the trust, authority revoked? Ava, what is this? It's a safeguard, I said calmly. Walter added it last year. He must have sensed something. He knew someone might try to manipulate things. Ava's face flushed deep red. This is absurd. It's a trick. It can't be real. Mr. Franklin adjusted his glasses. It's very real. Signed, notarized, and filed properly. Legally binding. Her composure cracked completely then. She slammed her hand on the table, her voice rising. This isn't fair. I've done everything for this family. I deserve. Michael cut her off, his voice shaking with anger. You deserve nothing if this is what you've been scheming. The room went silent. Ava stared at him, stunned, as though she had never expected him to push back. Then her eyes flicked to me, blazing with hatred. You did this. You poisoned him against me. You've been plotting since Walter died. I met her glare evenly. No, Ava. You did this to yourself. You showed your hand too soon. Walter saw you for who you are, and now so does everyone else. Michael pushed back from the table, standing abruptly. I can't even look at you right now. He left the office, slamming the door behind him. For the first time, Ava looked small. Defeated. Her hands trembled as she reached for her purse, her voice barely a whisper. This isn't over. But it was. She stormed out, her heels clicking furiously down the hall, leaving me and Mr. Franklin in silence. He looked at me, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Well played, Mrs. Hayes. Very well played. I exhaled slowly, my chest easing for the first time in weeks. Thank you. But this isn't about winning. It's about protecting what Walter built, what we built, from people who don't deserve it. That night, I sat by the window, looking out at the dark garden Walter had loved. The codicil lay on the table beside me, a quiet reminder that my husband had seen, had understood, even when I thought he didn't. But even as I sat there, a thought lingered. Ava wasn't done. She was humiliated, yes, but humiliation often breeds vengeance. And I had to be ready. After the meeting at Mr. Franklin's office, I thought maybe, just maybe, Ava would crawl back into her corner, licking her wounds, too humiliated to continue. I was wrong. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. Helen's voice came through, panicked. "Mom, turn on the news." I stumbled to the living room, heart pounding, and flicked on the TV. And there she was, Ava, standing on the steps of City Hall, giving an interview. She wore a somber black coat, her hair pulled into a neat bun, her face painted with false sorrow. "My mother-in-law is struggling," she told the reporters, her voice trembling just enough to seem sincere. "She's 80, grieving, and not thinking clearly. My late father-in-law entrusted me to help manage things, but she's resisting. I just want what's best for the family. It breaks my heart to see her lash out like this." Lash out? My fists clenched. She was painting me as senile, as unstable. The anchor's voice followed. "Sources say there's a legal dispute over the Hayes family estate. More to come." So that was her last card. If she couldn't control me directly, she'd try to break me publicly. Helen stormed over the next morning, newspaper in hand. The headline blared, "Family feud, widow resists daughter-in-law's guidance." "Mom, she's smearing you," Helen spat, slamming the paper on the table. "She's making it sound like you're unfit to handle anything." I looked down at Walter's codicil, folded neatly in front of me. My hands were steady, my resolve unshaken. "She wants a war?" I said softly. "Then she'll have one." That afternoon, I called Patricia, my oldest friend. Together we hatched the final step. If Ava wanted to drag me into the public eye, then the public would see everything, her greed, her betrayal, and her smirk at Walter's funeral. Yes, I had more than legal papers. I had something better. Helen had confided weeks earlier that a cousin had recorded parts of the funeral service on his phone. Out of respect, he hadn't shared it widely, but he had given a copy to Helen. She showed me one clip, shaky, grainy, but clear enough, Ava in the pew, smirking, whispering, "Finally, it's over." I had asked Helen to hold on to it until the right moment. That moment had arrived. We arranged a community gathering at the church hall, framed as a memorial fundraiser for Walter. The whole town came. They loved Walter. He had been a man of quiet strength, a neighbor who mowed lawns for the elderly and fixed leaky pipes without being asked. People wanted to honor him. Ava showed up too, dressed in navy, smiling graciously, shaking hands like a politician. She thought she could charm them all. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the podium slowly, the weight of 80 years and recent grief on my shoulders. But my voice was steady when I began. "Friends, you all knew my husband. You knew his kindness, his generosity. And you know how much he loved this community." There were nods, murmurs of agreement. But not everyone loved him the way they should have. Not everyone respected him. I gestured to the projector behind me. The first image appeared, Walter's codicil, his signature bold at the bottom. Gasps rippled through the room as I explained. Walter knew some people might try to manipulate what he left behind. So he made it clear, no spouse who tried to control his legacy would ever succeed. Ava shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Then came the second slide, photographs of her spreading rumors at salons, her words repeated by neighbors. And finally, the video. The shaky footage filled the wall, Ava, smirking at Walter's funeral, leaning to her friend, whispering, "Finally, it's over." The room went silent. Dead silent. Every eye turned to her. Some people gasped. Others shook their heads in disgust. Her face drained of color. That's taken out of context," she stammered, standing abruptly. "I didn't mean." But no one believed her. The damage was done. I leaned toward the microphone, my voice firm. "This is who she is." At my husband's funeral, while I wept over his coffin, she smirked and said, "Finally, it's over." To her, his death was not a loss. It was an opportunity. Murmurs of disapproval filled the hall. A man shouted, "Shame." Someone else muttered, "Disgraceful." Michael, who had sat silently until then, rose slowly from his chair. His face was ashen. He looked at Ava with something between horror and heartbreak. "Is this true?" She reached for him, desperation in her eyes. "Michael, please." But he stepped back. "I can't do this anymore. I can't stand by you after this." The hall erupted, whispers, glares, a sea of eyes condemning her. Ava fled, her heels clattering against the floor, her perfect hair bouncing as she disappeared out the door. I let the silence settle, then closed with words Walter himself would have spoken: dignity matters. Respect matters. And when those are stripped away, the truth must stand. When I left the podium, people came forward one by one, shaking my hand, offering their support. I wasn't just Walter's widow anymore. I was the woman who had stood her ground and defended his memory against betrayal. That night, back at home, I sat in Walter's study, the codicil and the video saved safely on my desk. Helen sat across from me, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Mom," she whispered. "You showed everyone." I smiled faintly, staring at Walter's photo on the wall. "No, sweetheart. Walter did. He saw her for what she was. I just carried it through." I leaned back in his chair, the faint smell of his tobacco lingering in the wood. For the first time since the funeral, I felt peace. Ava had thought Walter's death was her victory. She had smirked, whispered, "Finally, it's over." But in truth, it was just the beginning of her downfall. And my revenge, quiet, patient, complete, ensured that her smirk would haunt her forever.